Good evening, everybody. This is Patrick Millikin from the Poison Pen Bookstore, and we're here tonight with another of our virtual events. And I'm really excited this evening to have my good friend, longtime friend, Isabella Maldonado here with me to discuss this brand new book, A Different Dawn, which hits today. And it hits with a vengeance, because I want to show you all something here. Let me see if I can find it. All right. By the way, well, welcome, Isabella. Great to see you.
It's wonderful to be here. I love being at the pen.
And check this out, people. This is pretty awesome.
Wow.
That's what I'm talking about. How cool is that? Wow.
Downtown New York City.
You've arrived, Isabella.
So exciting.
And I knew you win.
Oh, yeah.
It's so cool. I'm so excited for you. This is really, really neat. Here's
you.
a different shot. That is too cool.
Thank you. It is really exciting to see that.
Yeah.
I about fainted when I saw it this morning when I got a picture of it.
And you didn't know, right?
No, it was a total surprise. My publisher surprised me with an email this morning. They said, "Hey, happy launch day, and here's surprise. Here it is." And I just hit the floor. I just couldn't believe it.
It's so cool. Well, this is, we'll be getting into it and talking about all sorts of stuff. But this is the second in your new series, the first being The Cipher, which came out last year.
Yep.
And, for those of you, the people that are watching who might not know anything about Nina Guerrera and the first book in the series, can you just give a basic introduction to the character and what she's all about? And then we'll pick it up from there.
Sure. Nina Guerrera is an FBI agent, and she has a really complicated past in that she was left in a dumpster at 1 month old as an infant and grew up in the foster system, never got adopted because she was labeled as difficult. And, most of the most fascinating women that I know have been labeled difficult. But anyway, so she grew up kind of without roots, and she had a traumatic experience. She had many, but a particularly traumatic experience when she was 16 years old. And after that experience, she had herself emancipated at 17. And that sort of changed the course of her life. And she decided that she wanted to go into law enforcement in order to try to protect people instead of just looking at herself as a victim. She went from being a victim to being a survivor to then being a protector. And then that's when she changed her name and became Nina Guerrera, which means the warrior girl. And that was her life's course.
And of course, she's based now, back in Virginia,
Mm-hmm.
But when this, for the people that are watching, sorry to be kind of tongue-tied here, the first three books were set, of course, here in Phoenix, Arizona, and with Veranda Cruz. And we come home to Phoenix in this book. I was really excited to see that. But just to kind of kick off the discussion of, why she comes back, at the heart of the story is this sort of folk legend that a lot of us in the Southwest are familiar with, called La Llorona, or the Weeping Woman, or the Wailing Woman, however it's translated. And reading a little bit about it, I'm going to ask you to describe what the story is, but it's some serious, very dark, Grimm's fairy tale kind of stuff. Can you talk a little bit about what the tale is?
Yes, it is. It's almost, it takes on sort of like a folklore, but yeah, definitely like the Grimm fairy tales, I think is an excellent, really good analogy, because it's very dark and disturbing. And when you think about it, the old Grimm fairy tales, the way they were originally told, tales like Hansel and Gretel and stuff. I mean, those are like disturbing things,
Very
and
disturbing.
this is like that too. And so it's the story of a woman who, she loves a man very, very much, and she has children with him, but then she comes to the conclusion that he loves the children more than he loves her. And then, the tale is different, and it's been told, it's very, very old. So there are many different ways that it's been told. And so the way that I tell it in this book, there's different versions, but in the version that I tell, she drowns the children when she catches her husband kissing another woman. And so she drowns the children to get back at him, but he won't go back with her. And so she's doomed to wander the earth searching for her lost children. But she also, in some versions of the tale, she kills herself and kills her husband. In other versions, she just throws herself into the river. I mean, but it's very, very creepy, spooky and disturbing, because it's kind of a ghost story, because her ghost is wandering the earth looking for her lost children. And so she's supposed to be crying, and she says, "Donde están mis hijos?" She's looking for her lost children. And so that is what she says. And that kind of sets up the story. And you're thinking to yourself, you maybe think, I mean, this is not a horror novel. It's not like a gothic horror novel, but I like the idea of sort of taking a very cultural element and, connecting it to how the story works and giving it that impetus that, kind of drives the narrative, and it comes into play later.
Yeah, and it's one of those things that, thematically, it does double, triple duty in a lot of different ways once you dig into it.
Yeah.
But can you talk a little bit about, I mean, the basic case that kicks this story off, that takes them back to Phoenix? Right.
Well, there's something called VICAP, which is the Violent Criminal Apprehension Program. In law enforcement, we love acronyms and jargon. We just love it. And so, using my own law enforcement background to sort of inform this, but this actually does exist. And so what VICAP does, the FBI runs it, and it basically, law enforcement agencies from all over the country input data into the VICAP system. And then the VICAP system is like, it's a massive computer database, and it just looks for similarities. And so what happens is that the Phoenix police, it sort of starts this because they see that there's a case that is actually a triple homicide that's been staged to look like a double homicide suicide. And it kind of, they thought it resembled something. There was like a VICAP hit that occurs with a case that occurred in New York City 4 years earlier. And so they go to the FBI, and they're like, they ask the profilers, could you guys examine these two cases and see if you think they're linked? Well, not only do they think those two cases are linked, the more they dig, the more they dig, the more they dig, the more they find. And this does happen sometimes on cases where it's like the more you dig, you really do learn a lot more. And that is what happens in this case.
It's amazing because, I was thinking about, I was watching, recently there have been some good true crime kind of documentary series about, the Ted Bundy story, right? Mm-hmm. And then a little bit later, the Richard Ramirez case. And, the 70s in particular were kind of the era, and the early 80s, I guess, the era of the traveling serial killer, mm-hmm. sort of terrorized the nation, and I was struck by this thought that, back then, which really wasn't that long ago, 40, 45 years ago now, it was much easier for somebody to simply cross state lines, mm-hmm. And disappear, which is what Bundy did. Mm-hmm. And, I'm reading this and I'm thinking, wow, think about how technology and really VICAP made this kind of thing, and I'm sure tons of other modern cases possible.
Exactly, VICAP, and also advances in DNA.
Sure.
And I do get into that later on, and I want to tell you right now, I want to give a shout out. A retired Phoenix homicide detective helped me because I needed someone who was a homicide detective, but like 20 years ago or 15 years ago or whatever, because the original case that they traced this all back to was a very long time ago, and things used to be investigated very differently. And to write it authentically, I needed to speak to someone who had those kind of chops, who, who's really been around a long time. So I went out and I interviewed her. Her name is Detective Sandra Rodriguez, and I credit her in the book as well. But I had a great time chatting with her, and it was also kind of fun because she's a Latina Phoenix police detective, so it was kind of fun to talk to her about that, her experiences doing that and everything. And she kind of joked with me, and she's like, "You do realize that I'm like Veranda Cruz." Because she was in narcotics and then she became a homicide detective. And I said, "Look, Sandra, I'm sorry, I didn't even know I was telling your story, but apparently I was, with my other series, the Cruise series." Kind of funny.
That's great. And so the original case, as they soon discover, and folks, I don't want to give away spoilers here, and this is the kind of book where it would be very easy for us to do that.
Yeah.
However, a lot of this is established very early on in the book about the basic framework of where they're going.
Correct.
And so the original case, which they call, I think they originally called it the Vega case, or the
La Llorona case, the original case.
Excuse me. And then the Vega case was.
And then the Vega case, yeah.
I got it backwards, yeah. But that happened, 28 years ago was the original.
Yes, 28 years ago.
Right.
And it's also, it's not, it's not like a spoiler or a giveaway, because this is established also very early that the cases occur on leap day.
Right.
Always on February 29th. And if you think about it, February 29th only rolls around once every 4 years.
Yeah.
So this guy kills on leap day. And they even talk about it, I have them even actually mentioned amongst themselves. They're like, it's kind of lucky because, I mean, if it was any other day of the year, he might kill every year and we'd have a whole lot more victims. But he kills every single leap day. So he only kills every 4 years, but it makes it harder for him to find or for them to find him, because he also goes to different cities. He picks major cities all over the country, and he does it every 4 years. So he has years to meticulously plan every detail of his crime. And he takes his time and he carefully does it. And the overwhelming majority of the time, he's been able to pass his crimes off as double murder suicides. So those cases are all closed. And so they aren't even, it isn't like the police have been looking for some serial killer for 28 years. They don't even know they have a serial killer. So even more difficult. He's very cagey and very smart.
Right. And at least from what you hear, a lot of these serial killers are, purposely leaving little tidbits, because their conceit is that, of course, they're brilliant and they're smarter than the cops.
Mm-hmm.
So in a lot of the Hollywood representations, you'll see them lead little clues, and like the Zodiac Killer and other famous cases like that.
Right.
Yeah.
That was more of the case with the cipher. He was more the type that he was taunting the police. In this case, it's quite the opposite. He is completely under the radar, and he has it set up so that people don't even realize what he's doing, or that even, that there's anybody who's committing these crimes at all. So
right.
Quite the opposite that you normally see.
Well, and this brings up an interesting question that I wanted to kind of pick your brain about. In the book, and I'm trying to keep all my acronyms straight because there are quite a few.
Yes, there are.
But this is definitely, although it is a Nina Guerrera novel, she's the protagonist, this is definitely a team unit. And, the FBI, the Behavioral Analysis Unit, it's called. Each of the people in this small team bring a unique skill set to the table. And it's interesting because it's a testament to your skill as a writer. A lot of what moves the story forward, there is quite a bit of action, don't worry, but is discussion. Mm-hmm. It's them brainstorming, it's them parsing out what's going on, yet you keep the story moving that way. I thought that was really ingeniously done. And can you talk about some of the main players, Jeffrey Wade, Buxton, Talk about your team.
Yeah, now the team that I've sort of invented a team that doesn't really exist in the FBI. I mean, the behavioral analysis unit exists, but they don't necessarily operate in the way that I have them operate. So what I did was I created Gerard Buxton. He is the supervisor. So he's the SSA, the Supervisory Special Agents, and he's kind of the boss. But he's trying out a pilot program. So his idea, because at this point, Nina has a background of 4 years in a police department and then 2 years on the FBI, which also is, you know, that's not unusual. But for someone with only 2 years in the FBI would normally not at all be in the BAU, the behavioral analysis unit. It takes a lot longer to get into there. But in order to sort of make this all plausible, I created this idea where Buxton wanted to try kind of a hybrid thing where he would pull together people who had different skill set. So he got Special Agent Kelly Breck, who is a cybercrime specialist. She has a background in video forensics and cybercrimes. And I actually spoke to one of the former assistant directors of the FBI, and I asked her about this. And, you know, I interviewed her, and she was saying, yeah, that's not unusual that we would want to have agents. You don't just pigeonhole them for their entire career doing one thing, that they would get expertise in one area, and then you might, you know, go ahead and detail them somewhere else because they would bring in different kinds of expertise. So, and they do have two on the team are 2 people who are actually BAU3, the Behavioral Analysis Unit. BAU3 specializes in crimes against children. So they, you know, it's very, very specialized sort of thing. And that is Dr. Jeffrey Wade, who is a psychologist, but, you know, also a special agent, has been for a long time. He's in his 50s. So, you know, he's toward the end of his career because the FBI does have an age limit. And so they, you know, you do get kind of timed out. You can have an extension, but not forever. And the other one is Special Agent Jake Kent, who he has a background as a Navy SEAL in Special Forces. And with him, the military paid for his college degree in psychology. And because when he was doing operations, covert operations, he would use those skills for interrogations and psyops and other kinds of things that the military might want him to do. So he's got, you know, he brings those different things to the table. So yeah, it's kind of a cool foursome that comes together, but it really doesn't exist in reality in the FBI. So I took some liberties with that.
Can you talk a little bit about, you know, this exactly what criminal profiling really is, and, you know, the public's endless fascination with it? I mean, it is a fascinating topic. Can you kind of get the record straight on what a criminal profiler actually does?
Sure. And, you know, I was also fascinated by it. One of the things, you know, I attended the FBI National Academy in Quantico. And one of the things when I was there, one of the courses that I took was taught by profilers from the BAU. They would come and teach. And they would, because I was in law enforcement, they would literally bring us cases and they would show us crime scene photos and they would show us videos of suspect interviews where I wouldn't even say suspect, these are people who've already been convicted, and they would go interview them after the fact. Part of the way that they built their sort of their knowledge in the very beginning, many years ago when they first started the unit, was by interviewing convicted serial killers so that they could try to understand how they worked. And so I was fascinated. And I think part of the reason that we all are fascinated is because we are trying to make sense of the senseless. You know, most murders are really at their core, they're acts of brutality, they are truly senseless, they are horrible things. And so the human mind kind of rails against the senselessness of it. And I think as individuals who are, you know, mentally normal, we try to understand, you know, what would make someone do something like this? Why would someone kill 30 people and stick them in a crawl space in the attic? Or, you know, these crazy things that you read about, you're like, why would anyone, what would drive someone to get to that point? and so, they have done the work, and it's taken them such a long time of interviewing these people and sort of parsing through the lies, the fantasies, the mental illness, the delusions and everything else. I mean, they have to get through all this stuff. And so what a profiler truly does is they'll draw from this large base of knowledge that they have formed, and they try to give law enforcement an idea of what kind of suspect they're looking for. And being in law enforcement too, I can tell you, we've been on the receiving end where we call the FBI, and I'll give you an example, one of my favorites, because I pulled from this case for the cipher, but the Beltway sniper case. My agency was one of several agencies that were involved in that investigation. And so we had the FBI was part of the task force working on that case, trying to provide insight to help us narrow down, because your whole thing is that you're trying to eliminate, you have thousands and thousands of potential suspects. You're trying to eliminate some, or at least narrow the parameters of the search a bit. And they do things like not only psychological profiling, but they do geographic profiling. Like they can give you an idea of where this person might live. They can, give you an idea of what this person's background might be like. And, it's not magic, but it does require a lot of intuition, and it also requires an incredible amount of training. And these men and women who go through this, they have to really, they explain it to me this way. One of the other things that they have to do is they have to put themselves in the mind of both the victim and the killer. And that is very, very mentally draining and exhausting to do, especially because some of these crimes are truly heinous. And to really sink yourself into the mind of the one who did it and the suffering of the one who had it done to them as they were dying, it takes a real emotional toll. And I have such respect for all of those people who were involved in doing it, and they make a big sacrifice, and it's done just to try to help stop these people from killing again.
Yeah, it's funny because one of the things I was going to ask you about is, as we're reading and kind of not looking over their shoulders, but listening in on some of these discussions, I learned a lot about kind of what's currently going on in terms of, how law enforcement or the FBI thinks about, terms like psychopathy, and, it's not exactly in vogue anymore. There's a little passage I wanted to read where it says, Nina knew just enough psychology to be dangerous. I'm not a psychologist, she said, although I play one on the team. Why a psychopath and not a sociopath? And she's asking Wade, who's the expert, and he says, there's a great deal of debate on the matter, Wade began. In my opinion, you're born a psychopath, but you become a sociopath. It says the term psychopathy has fallen out of favor, although Kent and I sometimes use it. But now the preferred term is another acronym, ASPD, antisocial personality disorder. What can you tell us about that kind of shift?
I think a lot of times these terms do go in and out of favor. I think that has happened over time with a lot of psychological. Every time there's a new DSM, they tend to change some of these terminologies. But so right now it's antisocial personality disorder. I guess they wanted to put it into the disorder category, so it would be viewed that way. But I do talk about this in the book, and some of it is quite interesting. About they've done brain scans on some of these people, and they've discovered that their brains really do fire differently than quote unquote normal people. They don't have the same kind of reaction. And I talk about this in the book, but one of the reasons I talk about is I find it fascinating that they just don't have the capacity to react in the same way that other people do. And then also, you know, some of the research that I was doing and discovering that a true, real, I mean, people throw words like psychopath around a lot, but someone with a truly diagnosed antisocial personality disorder, those are rare, and they really only make up 1 to 3% of the population, depending on the study. So they're quite rare. But interestingly, again, depending on the study, they make up anywhere from like 40 to 80% of the prison population. Because you can just imagine that someone who isn't wired to feel any compassion or any, you know, anything other than just whatever they want, they get, you can understand how someone like that would not follow the rules of society, shall we say. And so they do tend to run afoul of the criminal justice system on a regular basis.
Well, it's interesting because there's a lot of kind of crossover between, I guess what you'd call a narcissist
Mm-hmm.
and you know, a sociopath, and you know, as you point out in the book, you know, they become expert at imitating human behavior, imitating those feelings, passing off for normal, you know, very chameleon-like. But one of the things that, you know, as you were just saying a minute ago, it's like, I think what fascinates us all is, you know, what are we capable of doing? You know, under the right stressors, under the right circumstances, you know, what are we all capable of doing?
I agree, and I find that endlessly fascinating too. And you know, in all my books, I do like to study that too. I put everyone under the most extreme pressure. I call it like it's like everyone's in a crucible, you know, and you just turn up the heat and turn up the heat, and then when you're in a crucible, you're basically getting down to the essence of who the person is. I mean, that's what a crucible does. And so so I like to put everyone in that sort of situation, and then you can really see who they are. And I like to let the reader, you know, sort of experience that. And that's both with the people on both sides of the law, because it is also intensely stressful to investigate these cases, as I mentioned before. And then, you know, when I really ratchet it up, like in these books, the different ones that I've written, I like to show how when you see that the bad guy, quote unquote, is about to get away with it, and then it's like, oh my gosh, you know, the thing is that the criminals don't have to follow any rules. When you're in law enforcement, you have certain rules that you need to follow in order to investigate a case. And if you don't do it, then you lose the case and whatever. But the criminal, they have no rules. They just need to get away with it. They can use any amount of force. They can do anything they want. They can destroy evidence. They can lie. They can cheat, you know, everything. And it gives them a terrible advantage.
Right. Now, it's funny, and then we'll kind of move on, but you know, these serial killers, that like the popular ones that like Thomas Harris created, for example, the Hannibal Lecter character. You know, part of the reason, I mean, I can't speak for anybody else, but that he's so terrifying to me was that his brilliance.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I mean, here's a guy who's an intellectual, you know, brilliant man in a lot of other ways.
Mm-hmm.
In your experience, or at least in talking to people, profilers and so forth, do these Lecter kind of characters really exist, or are they very, very few and far between?
They are very, very few. I mean, to have that level, to be like truly a genius,
Right.
that is rare. But here's what is not, you know, anyone who's a serial killer by definition is smarter in some ways, because they're able to get away with it for so long, and that's how they become serial killers. So a lot of them have this, it may not be like an IQ like Einstein, but they have a wily intelligence to them, very clever, very conniving. And that is also the kind of personality that I'm describing here. In A Different Dawn, is that, you know, he's just really, really wily and smart and cagey. And that is what, and some of them, you know, I hate to say it, but sometimes it's just dumb luck will work in their behalf. But other times they know what they're doing, and they plan it out, and they are able to get away with it because they kind of understand how to play different scenarios off of each other, and how to sort of, you know, hamstring law enforcement in certain ways.
Right, right. Now, was this particular case, was it inspired by anything that you've a specific case that you've come across?
No, no, this one was not. Like I said, the cipher, I kind of got the idea from the Beltway sniper, and although, you know, it doesn't really have a lot to do with that, but, you know, certain elements. This one, really, what I wanted to do was to explore, what if you had a narcissistic person with antisocial personality disorder as a killer, and, you know, with enough caginess and smartness to be able to, you know, what if the police literally didn't even know a crime was being committed, and, you know, how would that play out? And then someone with those kind of manipulative abilities, I mean, that is the sort of the hallmark, and many people with ASPD also have narcissism issues, and it makes them just master manipulators. And I thought, you know, how hard would that be? What kind of how tough of a nut would that be to crack?
Now, I'm sure a lot of people that, well, maybe I'm not sure about this. You have whole legions of new fans. Can you just briefly, I should have asked you this earlier, but you've had extensive experience, obviously, and we've talked about this a lot. Can you just briefly outline your background in law enforcement?
Sure, sure. So I started out, I'm from the East Coast, and on the Fairfax County Police Department, which is a large metropolitan department that's like in the suburbs of DC. It's inside the Beltway. And so I had 22 years in that career. Started off as, you know, a patrol officer. The police force is not like the military. You can't come in as a lieutenant. It's not like everybody starts off as like slick sleeve. So you have to work your way up. And by the time I retired, I was a captain. And my last position was commander of special investigations and forensics. And during my time there, I was selected to attend the FBI National Academy at Quantico. And that is like a 3-month extensive training that is for law enforcement executives from around the world. And so you live on campus right there with the FBI, and you do all these, you know, all this training. I actually got to run the famous obstacle course. Those of you who have seen The Silence of the Lamb, the movie Silence of the Lambs with Jodie Foster running through the obstacle course, they actually call it the Yellow Brick Road is what it is. And I mentioned this in the cipher. I kind of feature that a little bit, but I actually did, you know, go through that. It was definitely a very challenging course and a highlight. I actually have my yellow brick. There it is right there.
Oh, that's cool.
If you make it through the course, you get a yellow brick. So I get to show my my yellow brick that I completed the obstacle course in one piece. It was really hard.
One of the things I always like about your in-person visits here at the Poison Pen is, well, Isabella always brings the coolest swag to give to readers.
Yeah. Yeah, I know. We haven't, because of COVID, we haven't been able to have a party there, but you know,
we will. Let's kind of do a little, and besides, I also wanted to say there are a lot of people asking questions on Facebook.
Okay.
I will jump in and be happy to ask some of your questions. And sorry, I'm kind of flying solo here, but I am paying attention. So if you have questions for Isabella, please keep writing them in there. But let's do a little deeper dig on Nina. I love, there's some really great little details. Tell us about Bianca Babbage, how close that is to baggage. Is that?
Probably, exactly. Isn't that kind of funny?
Yeah.
But yeah, so Bianca is, she is a 17-year-old girl who Nina kind of rescued. When Nina was a patrol officer, I have her starting as a patrol officer in Fairfax County, actually. And so when when Nina was a patrol officer, there was this juvenile runaway. It was Bianca. She constantly was running away all the time. And so one time Nina decided, I've got to try to, stop this whole thing. I got to get to the bottom of it and figure out what's going on. So when she finally tracked down Bianca, at that time, Bianca was only 14 years old. And she got Bianca to admit to her that she was in the foster system as well, and that she was being abused. And so all of Nina's protective instincts kicked in because she saw herself. It was like a younger version of herself. And so Nina knew from her own experience that a 14-year-old girl who keeps running away and trying to live on the street, it's not going to end well. It did not end well for Nina. She had a horrific situation because she ran away from an abusive foster situation. So she didn't want that to happen to Bianca. So she got hold of her and then, and set her up with her next door neighbor, Mrs. Gomez, who was an empty nester.
Right.
And Bianca she has a genius IQ. And so once she was able to get a stable home environment, she was able to, she finished high school very quickly, and she's getting ready to finish college. She's only 17 years old, and she's finishing up her undergraduate degree at George Washington University. And so, so she's got, she's quite the character. And I like to kind of have her, again, she's not so hardened that she has no feelings, because again, kind of Nina saved her before that happened. And so she still has a lot of capacity to have all these feelings and emotions, but she just covers them up a lot because of her background in the foster system as well.
Right. Now, doing a little research, and I'm sure you come across plenty of situations with the foster system, both positive and negative.
Yeah.
Did you go down a rabbit hole, or have you been down the dark rabbit hole of?
Yeah, certainly, and I do want to show that that there's good side to it too, and that was
Right.
That's sort of embodied with the Gomez's, who live next door. They're a loving, wonderful foster family, and they take in all these kids, and they do a great job, and they're incredible. And I wanted to make sure people understood that the foster system is not just all negative. I mean, there's wonderful people who do that, and it's a big deal to take in kids who are kind of at-risk youth and foster them and open up your home and your heart. It's very challenging. But yeah, I did need to do a lot of research in that to make sure that part was authentic.
Right. Now, as I said, this book takes place largely here in Phoenix, and I love how you you pack it with all kinds of cool insider details, and even you introduce us to a character, the brilliant Dr. Deborah Ledford, who we both know, and she is indeed brilliant.
Yes, she is. She is one of my favorite people. So yeah, I had to give her a shout out in the book, and I named a character after her. She is an amazing and talented, wonderful person. Yes.
Yeah. And a survivor.
Yes, exactly. Yes.
Big time.
Yes.
And it's fun. Deborah, she's watching.
Oh, I knew she'd be watching.
And also Robin Bursell, is a great writer, a former law enforcement officer. She's tuned in too.
Oh,
good friend of both of ours.
Robin was one of the first people who, encouraged me, she gave me my first blurb for Blood's Echo, my very, very, very first ever blurb. Robin did that for me. She was just amazing and so generous. Yes. Yeah. Very successful, really talented author, willing to sort of take a shot and give me advice early on in my career. Yeah.
Now, when you and Robin get together, or you and anybody else who's in a law enforcement background,
mm-hmm.
is there kind of like a language or a mindset that you can kind of slip into? And
yes, yeah, we always do. We always do.
Civilians don't get.
Yes, yeah. I'm part of a blog group, Murder Books. It's a blog group, and you'll see that I regularly post there, and it's all people who have some dealing with the criminal justice system, whether it's being a cop or being a prosecutor or, being an attorney or whatever, there are 8 of us, and, we all are talk about that. But yeah, whenever we get together and I talk to other authors who have a background in law enforcement, absolutely. And actually, here's another shout out, Jerry Williams, an FBI agent who now writes, and she writes both fiction and nonfiction. And she was out of the Philadelphia field office with the FBI. Huge resource for me, helping to make sure I got my FBI facts straight. Because, and that's the other thing too, because even though I have a background in law enforcement, things change, and you still have to make sure that you keep up with all of the current stuff. And like, also, I still go to training all the time. The FBI National Academy puts on training for everyone who's been through it. And so I make sure I go so I can get the very latest information, because the science is constantly changing.
And it's probably, there's a specific, subtle changes in the FBI culture versus the, police culture. Yeah.
I think it takes the FBI longer to change, simply because it is like turning, it's like turning a big ship, like an aircraft carrier. It's such a huge organization. They have like 38,000 employees in the FBI, civilian, sworn, support, all that. I mean, it's a massive organization. So for them to change, it happens, but they're able to do it. And when they need to, they can operate pretty quickly. After September 11, they really did change pretty quickly to focus on terrorism, for example.
Yeah. It's funny reading the book, and knowing you, I was like, all right, is she gonna like, baby the Phoenix PD, and treat them really, gently? And I was like, all right, she didn't.
No, I don't. Oh, sorry, my dog is barking. No, I don't pull any punches.
Yeah.
I heard a term recently, and I just was appalled when I heard it. Apparently there's a term going around called copaganda, where they feel like, some of these police procedurals, whether it's in movies, shows, or books or whatever, is like too much like pro-police, and artificially so, and like the police never make a mistake and everything.
Right.
I'm like, no, that's really not my job. I mean, I wore a gun and a badge for 22 years, and I know that law enforcement, they're human beings, and they make mistakes, and they're not perfect, and there's no need to whitewash anything. And so you have to really come out and be as straightforward and honest about it as possible.
Now, let's see, Jim, he asks about the 3rd book, the Falcon. Is that going to be the last Nina Guerrera book, or are you not sure about that yet?
I am not sure. That's a really good question. I am not sure. I do have a 2-book contract to, so one is the Falcon, and then a 4th book. But the 4th book, I don't know whether it will be another Nina Guerrera or be something different. I guess I'm not sure. I'm just focusing on the Falcon right now, and then I guess we have to wait and see what happens next.
Yeah.
So.
All right. Tell us about J-Lo and all that exciting, wonderful TV stuff you got going on.
Right. And actually, and who knows, that may actually come into play with it. Sure. Because so the J-Lo deal, it's for a feature film, not a TV series.
Okay.
People think Netflix, they always think TV series, but it's not. They do feature films as well, and it's a feature film. So what I was just really, really blown away. I mean, the cipher, everybody just sort of, it really just exploded beyond anything that I ever imagined. It was incredible. It was so well received. And so last November, J-Lo's production company, she has a production company called Nuyorican Productions. That's another Easter egg, Nuyorican. So, but Nuyorican Productions, they were extremely interested in this. And then I'll never forget the feeling I had when I was told that J-Lo was reading the book. I cannot tell you what that feels like. It was amazing. And then, she really liked it. And then, so her production company, they got together with Netflix, and they just, really kind of brought their A game, and they were serious about wanting to do this. And so they wanted to do it as a feature film. And so we went ahead and, we signed that deal. And so I'm an executive producer and also a consultant. And so I have been very blessed, and I'm lucky they already hired screenwriters, and I've been in touch with them a couple of times to talk about it. And that has been really an incredible learning experience and amazing. And so as we work through that, I don't know exactly what the schedule is, because it's you can't always tell things, and I've had to learn things in Hollywood are different. But the latest sort of I've heard is that they're hoping they can start filming maybe sometime toward the end of this year or sometime next year. So, maybe the movie will be out sometime, maybe toward the end of next year or maybe 2023. I'm not sure, but that may have some impact on there. But I was, it's funny because I was thinking about it recently. In 2019, I went to Las Vegas with my husband, and I saw J-Lo on stage. I mean, this is before the cipher was even written. I had no idea that I was ever going to have anything to do with her in any way, shape, or form. I'm just a fan. I just love her.
On
So
stage as a singer or in?
yeah, she had an act in Las Vegas
I see.
and at Caesar's Palace.
Oh,
And so
wow.
my husband and I was in the audience at Caesar's Palace watching J-Lo perform on stage. And by the way, amazing performance, amazing, loved it. And now she's going to play the lead role in something that I wrote. I'm just like, okay, in what universe does
Gotta
this
be
even happen?
surreal.
It's totally surreal. And then I was also thinking that, a while back, I was in New York City and I was walking through Times Square, and now there's like a billboard up there with my book on it, or there will be. Actually, the one that you showed is actually just outside of Penn Station. And then starting on August 17th, there's going to be a billboard in Times Square with the book on it. So, I mean, just again, it's the same thing. I mean, I was walking through Times Square looking around, like every other tourist, right? Just staring up at all of the signs and the lights and now my book's going to be there. And it's the same thing. It's totally surreal. It's one of these amazing things you never know it's going to happen, and life is just incredible.
Well, congrats. I mean, I couldn't be happier for you. That's really cool. Let's see. Let me look at some of these questions for you. Yeah. Okay, here. A few people are asking, I'll just paraphrase a little bit, about mystery novels and crime fiction that deals with the pandemic that's going on.
Mhm.
Are you, like in the next book, are you dealing with it in any way, or are you just kind of like skipping it?
I'm totally skipping it. And actually, if you think about it, I'd mentioned that A Different Dawn is set in leap years. The killer kills every February 29th. So obviously 2020 was a leap year. There was a February 29th. So it's actually set in 2020. I mean, I don't really bring that much attention to it because I want to kind of leave that part of it. I don't want to date it that firmly, but anybody who really stops and thinks about it, you're going to know that. But I thought about it, as I was writing the book. First of all, it was, your books are always written a year in advance. So I was writing it in 2019 before COVID hit.
Right.
And then as I was going into final edits, I'm like, do I really want to go back and like rewrite this whole thing to put everybody's wearing a mask and then they had the lockdown and all that? And I thought, no, I didn't want to do it because frankly, I'm sick of, COVID. I
We're
don't
all
want to think
so
about it. We're
exhausted.
all sick to death of it, right? So I mean, and it's funny because I'm in different authors groups, and authors do feel differently. Some feel like to be authentic, they have to write about it. They have to write about the lockdown, and they have to write. And for some of them, the lockdown is actually, the plot turns on the lockdown. They don't just mention it. I mean, they lean into it, and that's great. That's great. I just wanted to get as far away from it as possible, and I just didn't want to lock myself into that time frame.
Right.
And and the Falcon actually picks up right after A Different Dawn leaves off, and I just am still not mentioning it. I don't want to think about it.
Yeah, I hear you. I think everybody's just so exhausted by it.
Yeah.
And And also, you know, we don't know how it's all going to shake down. So
Exactly.
it's
No, we
like
don't.
maybe a little perspective would be good. But you're right. You know, I see various different writers.
Mhm,
Anyway,
mhm,
let's see here. Yeah, I guess Karen Slaughter's latest book had something to do with it. I have not read it yet,
mhm.
but she's a
Right.
damn good writer.
Oh, she's amazing.
Yeah.
Love her.
Yep. Let's see. Jim Beach, good friend of mine and probably yours
Yeah.
too.
Yes.
Great
I love
guy.
Jim. Yes.
Yeah. And wait, I'm sorry, these messages keep coming in and moving on me. Uh, is there an author that you consider a mentor? Or maybe
Yeah.
authors, plural?
Yeah. Well, there are several. And actually Robin Bursell, as I mentioned before, is one of them. Lisa Preston is another one. Very, very helpful. She's also former law enforcement. Very helpful very early on in my career, and gave me a lot of advice. And then also J.A. Jance, extremely helpful, gave me a lot of good advice about the business of writing. You know, and I mean, none of them really were like talking to me like, okay, this is how you write a story. That's not the kind of advice I'm talking about, but just writing really is a business if you want to make a career of it. And there is so much to be known. And someone like J.A. Jance, I mean, she's written like over 75 books now.
Yeah.
She's been a New York Times bestseller many times, and she has an
Wow.
incredible body of work. And she has shared a lot of that hard-won wisdom about, how that works, kind of how the sausage is made. And very, very helpful and insightful to me. And I have to definitely give her a shout out for that.
Yeah, what a pro.
Yes. Yeah, she really is.
Let's see. I have a question from, and I'm sorry, I'm going to blow this person's name. I think it's Licha or Licha, Licha. It's a pretty name. I just don't know how to pronounce it. She says, Isabella, do your book characters talk to you? And if they do, have you had to change something in the story because of it?
They don't talk to me in the sense like I hear other authors talk about how they go, kind of into a room by themselves or whatever, and they hear their characters yelling up. And I don't have that kind of experience. It's more for me of just as I'm writing, I will start to write a scene and it will just sort of not ring true to me. And I'll feel like this character would not do this and this character would not say that. And, I'm just, it just doesn't feel right. And I know it doesn't resonate and it's not, it doesn't work. So for that reason, that's kind of it. That's, and then I'll rewrite the scene until it does. Oh, and one more mentor thing I do want to give a shout out to Lee Goldberg. Has been very helpful too.
Oh,
Very
yeah,
given me a lot of good advice. He's
great guy.
amazing. Yes. So,
Todd too, his brother. It's funny to get them together, but it's Licha. Okay, great. That's cool. Let's see. Okay, what is your favorite childhood book?
yes, that one's really easy. It's A Wrinkle in Time.
Oh yeah.
That was the one that really got me when I was very young in elementary school. When I read that book, it transported me to such a totally different place. And that was the first sort of opening that I had that of like, books are magical. They can take you to different realms. They can make you think about things in ways that you never thought possible. They can do amazing things and they can really change you as a person and your whole outlook. And once that happened to me, that's when I knew also I wanted to be an author because I'm like, I would like to give this magic to other people. It was incredible.
There was a question, boy, I've lost track of it, but it was basically about congratulating you on the TV or the movie thing and asking about the executive producer role and what all that entails.
Well, I guess it depends and it varies from production to production. And so it's kind of like whatever they need me to do, I will do. And I'm there and I'm available. And that's kind of that's kind of also wrapped into my consulting. And so with the consulting credit as well, I mean, they will ask me sometimes, is this possible? Would this really happen in law enforcement or whatever? and ask me questions about that part of it, and I'll answer. So that's more of kind of what I'm involved with. So we'll see. I think as we get closer to the actual filming and production, I'll probably be able to answer more questions about what an executive producer does. But they haven't even cast everybody yet. Right now we have J-Lo. We're not sure who all the other actors are, and they haven't attached a director yet. They've got screenwriters, but so we're early on. So I guess I'll find out.
They're not going to try to put Ben Affleck in it, are they?
I have no idea. Are you thinking Bennifer? Is that what you're thinking?
Bennifer,
No,
yeah.
I have no idea. That I don't have any inside scoop on that.
I'm just kidding. Oh yeah, another author. You got lots of authors tuning in tonight. Our friend Tori Eldridge is just tuning in to say hi. She's great.
Tori. She's wonderful.
Yeah. Well, let's see. Any more questions? Oh yeah, have you been in touch with the screenwriter? Have you traded notes, or is that something doesn't happen?
No, I have. And I've actually been on a couple of conference calls. There's a pair of screenwriters. There's two of them, Jason and Todd. I'm having a brain cramp on their last names. This is terrible. But anyway, this is awful. But I've actually had video conferences with them a couple of times, and we actually do talk about what's going on, with the script. And that's when they'll ask me questions. And sometimes they're very specific law enforcement type questions. Other times they're character questions. So yeah, it is always a shock when you see another writer taking your work and reinventing it, shall we say. But it's part of the, it's part of the business. That's the way it is. And so you just have to figure that you're in good hands. I mean, Netflix is an amazing organization. Jennifer Lopez is just a total phenomenon. You figure I'm in good hands. They're going to do, something really amazing with it. And I just want to help in whatever way I can.
Absolutely. I'm just going to put this back up again just for fun.
Yes. Wow.
It's so cool. For those of you who just tuned in or who didn't catch it, this is what Isabella woke up to today.
Yes.
It doesn't get much cooler than that. Well, hey, I just want to say congratulations.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's so awesome. Here is the new book, A Different Dawn. And I haven't even done my commercial plug, which is that Isabella's going to sign a bunch of copies for us. So if you'd like an autographed copy, give us a call or go to our website. And I also wanted to point out that we carry all of Isabella's books. Here's the first book in the series, The Cipher, and the 3 handsome volumes. I feel like a used car salesman here. The Veranda Cruz series. She's brought them all back out. So if you're missing them, we've got them.
Yeah.
So anyway, let me turn that off. There we go. That's about it.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thanks
always so
everybody.
much fun.
Thanks everybody for tuning in too.
Yeah, thank you everybody. And I always have so much fun talking to you, Patrick. Patrick interviewed me the very first time with Blood's Echo, and you have interviewed me for every book afterwards, and it's just been amazing. And I love the pen, and that is where anybody can, if you want the autograph stuff, that's where to get it. So yes.
Thanks so much. Yeah, it's a nice little tradition we have going. Yeah.
Indeed.
All right. Well, the end of a very exciting day for you, the book release day. So have a glass of wine and have a good rest of your night.
I will. Thank you very much, everybody. And thank you, Patrick.
Thank you.